I walked in and found my fiancée with my brother, and when my family tried to act like it was just complicated love, I realized I was the only one expected to swallow the betrayal. I found out on a Tuesday that my life had been happening in a different house than the one I thought I lived in. I'd left work early because the supplier finally called to say the replacement hinge for our cabinet had come in. I decided I'd install it and surprise my fiancée, Harper, with a kitchen that didn't groan every time we reached for salt. I let myself in, rehearsing a dumb joke about marriage being mostly maintenance, and heard laughter from the bedroom. My brother's laugh. The private one, the one he uses when he wants someone to like him more. I froze by the hallway photo, our parents on a pier, sunburnt and hopeful, and in the next beat my name came out of Harper's mouth like a flinch and then a whisper, "Door's locked." It wasn't. I opened it. I wish I could tell you I shouted or did something cinematic. I didn't. Caleb was shirtless, Harper wrapped in our throw blanket, both of them looking like people in a bad commercial who didn't expect the camera to actually turn on. For half a second I thought, this is a mistake, a misunderstanding, some stupid prank. Then Harper said, quietly, "Finn," and my whole chest rang like a struck glass. Caleb spoke first because he always does. "It just happened," he said, "like the weather, like gravity. We tried to stop." Harper reached for my hand like there was a version of the world where contact would explain it better. I stepped back and the ring on her finger flashed in a way I hated, like it had been watching, too. I remember the smell, laundry detergent and the citrus candle Harper likes when she's anxious. I remember noticing my brother's socks, my socks, actually, the pair he always forgot to return. I remember thinking I needed air. I put the hinge on the dresser like a weird calling card and walked out. Harper followed to the doorway barefoot, asking me to please talk, and Caleb said my name with a pleading I'd heard when we were kids and he'd cracked a window with a baseball. I didn't slam the door. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I'd been so careful with my whole life that even my exit tried to be gentle. My parents were with me immediately, the way parents can be when something shatters and they remember how to run. My mother, Anne, sat me at her kitchen table and made tea like it could build a bridge back to before. My dad kept saying okay in different tones like he was trying to find one that would work. They were furious in the way kind people are, bewildered that the rules they live by could be ignored so casually. They said all the sentences you'd expect. "We're here. You don't have to decide anything tonight. We never imagined," and they also said the sentence I needed most, "You did nothing wrong." Caleb texted that night. A paragraph that started with "I'm sorry" and the word soulmate too close to it. Harper sent a separate message, "Please, can we talk before you decide?" Decide what? I wanted to write, but my hands were shaking, and my mother took the phone and put it face down and I let her because I am 30 and sometimes you still need someone older than you to stop time for 10 minutes. I ended the engagement 2 days later in a coffee shop where the barista kept writing names on cups and I kept waiting for mine to announce a different person. Harper cried, quiet and steady, and told me she'd been confused for months and only realized what the confusion meant when she and Caleb kept finding themselves talking in corridors and cars and at the sink while I took phone calls about overtime. I could have argued with every sentence. I didn't. "You could have told me before you kissed him," I said, and left the ring in its little box between us like a monument to a story that had been true right up until it wasn't. For a while my parents took my side so hard it scared me. They told Caleb to get out of their house and returned his keys like the world was still made of tangible consequences. My father didn't speak to him. My mother did, but only in the language of logistics. "Boxes here, lease there, do you have food?" I moved back into my old room for a week because the silence in my apartment sounded like something was still happening there, and I needed sleep more than pride. Then the slide began. Slow, almost imperceptible at first. Caleb came to Sunday dinner. My mother set 4 places instead of 3 by accident. He sat at the end of the table and cried into his hands, and my mother, who cannot stand to see any of her children in pain even when they are the cause of it, put a napkin on his knee and said, "Eat." My father stared at his plate and found a way to excuse himself when dessert came. He lasted 2 weeks. The 3rd week he said, in a voice that was not for me, "I want peace," and I knew what it meant. The family body was going to try to knit around the wound even if it sealed me out. Harper appeared at the periphery of events like she was allergic to direct sunlight. She came to drop off a sweater that wasn't mine and managed to stay an hour talking to my mother about recipes. She sent my father an article about forgiveness, as if theory could make history polite. She texted me once more at midnight to say she hoped I'd be in a place one day where we could acknowledge the complexity of love. I typed and deleted so many versions of "It's not complex," then put my phone on airplane mode and stared at the ceiling until morning drew lines through the blinds. Holidays turned into negotiations. My parents asked, careful and careless at the same time, if I could be civil for Thanksgiving. Civil is a word people use when they want you to swallow something jagged without showing blood. I went. I timed my arrival to the minute I said I would. I sat at the far end and made neutral conversation about running shoes with my cousin. Caleb stood up with a wine glass and said, throat tight, that he was grateful for honesty in this house. I excused myself and threw up quietly in the downstairs bathroom while the cat tried to push the door open with its head. By spring, Caleb and Harper had a picture on Instagram that was half apology and half audition, their hands tangled, the caption about unexpected paths and the heart wants. I blocked them because my heart doesn't need interviews. In summer they got engaged. The announcement arrived in my parents' mailbox with gold flecks that stuck to my mother's fingers. You don't have to go, she said immediately, and I said I know, and then she said, smaller, I don't know what to do, and I said, I know that, too. They married in October in a rustic venue where apples hung like props and my father wore a suit that didn't fit because nothing does when you're trying to carry two truths at once. I didn't go. I drove to the water and walked until my feet hurt, then sat on a bench beside a couple arguing softly about whether to name their baby after her grandmother. I cried in a way that made strangers glance over and then politely look away. My phone lit up with a photo my aunt sent me without comment, my parents smiling like it was their job. I turned off the screen and watched a gull drop and catch a shell because the effort looked like survival. People say time heals. What it actually does first is widen the distance between event and echo. The echo softened. I stopped flinching at every blue sedan because Caleb drives one. I started cooking in my apartment again without feeling like I was betraying the memory of a life I didn't get. I started therapy and learned the names of things that help you not collapse: boundaries, grief work, complicated love. I stopped writing drafts of speeches for imaginary family meetings that would never happen. I made new friends who didn't know me as half of a couple or one of two brothers. They knew me as Finn who brings extra napkins and hates cilantro. A year passed, then two. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon that smelled like rain and printer toner, my phone rang and the screen showed Caleb. I answered by mistake, muscle memory from before, and said hello into a silence that felt like the roof of a church. Can we talk? He asked. Not to fix it. Just to say things. We met at a park where our mother used to bring us to feed ducks stale bread before someone told her that was bad for ducks. He looked older, which is a neutral thing to say until you realize it's your brother. He didn't hug me, which I appreciated more than I would have expected. He said he was sorry without campaigning for forgiveness. He said their marriage wasn't the reward for a risk he thought it would be, it was a complicated thing he was trying to do well. He said he loved me. I said I knew and didn't add anything because love is not the only ingredient required for a life you can stand to be in. He asked if we could start over. I said I don't know. I asked if he understood that starting over wouldn't mean going back. That there would be rooms he didn't get to walk into anymore. That there would be holidays where my seat was somewhere else on purpose. He nodded. He cried in the way that is hardest to watch, silent, like he was trying not to make trouble even with his own grief. We sat for a long time, not saying anything useful, while a kid in a red jacket ran in circles until he fell down laughing. I'm not bow tying this. I didn't go to their housewarming when they moved. I do answer Caleb now, sometimes, and we talk about our father's blood pressure and whether mom should be the one up on a ladder painting the hallway. I sent a gift when their daughter was born because babies are not responsible for the weather they arrive in. Harper wrote a thank you card in careful handwriting that used to make me feel chosen. I put it in a drawer and didn't tell my therapist for a week because I wanted one thing that wasn't workshopped to death. What I know is this: betrayal didn't turn me into a better person, and it didn't ruin me, either. It made me learn how to leave a room I loved without setting it on fire. It made me learn how to say no without a paragraph of citations. It made me learn that sometimes you choose peace alone because the version of peace offered to you requires you to prove your pain is tidy. The other day my mother asked if I'm happy. I told her I'm learning to be okay in a way that's quiet, which is better. I keep the hinge I bought on the day everything changed on my desk like a dark joke that turned into a reminder. Some doors need fixing, some doors you close. I walk most evenings. I don't look at the houses I pass and imagine which ones contain the version of my life where nothing broke. I look at the one I have, lights on, keys in my pocket, food I chose myself, and I tell the kid I used to be, you didn't deserve it, and you don't have to carry it to be good. Then I go inside.